A Doctor of Medicine by Rudyard Kipling. They were playing hide-and-seek with bicycle lamps after tea. Dan had hung his lamp on the apple tree at the end of the hellebore bed in the walled garden, and was crouched by the gooseberry bushes ready to dash off. When Una should spy him, he saw her lamp come into the garden and disappear as she hid it under her cloak. While he listened for her footsteps, they both thought it was Phillips the gardener, coughed in the corner of the herbs. "All right," Una shouted across the asparagus, "we aren't hurting your old beds, Phipsy." She flashed her lantern towards the spot, and in its circle of light they saw a Guy Fawkes-looking man in a black cloak and a steeple-crowned hat walking down the path beside Puck. They ran to meet him, and the man said something to them about rooms in their head. After a time, they understood. He was warning them not to catch colds. "You've a bit of a cold yourself, haven't you?" said Una, for he ended all his sentences with a consequential cough. Puck laughed. PG 254. "Child," the man answered, "if it hath pleased heaven to afflict me with an infirmity." "Nay, nay," Puck struck in, "the maid spoke out of kindness. I know that half your cough is but a catch to trick the vulgar, and that's a pity. There's honesty enough in you, Nick, without rasping and hawking." "Good people," the man shrugged his lean shoulders, "the vulgar crowd love not truth unadorned, wherefore we philosophers must needs dress her to catch their eye or ahem their ear." "And what do you think of that?" said Puck solemnly to Dan. "I don't know," he answered, "it sounds like lessons." "Ah well, there have been worse men than Nick Culpepper to take lessons from. Now where can we sit that's not indoors?" "In the haymow next to old Middenboro," Dan suggested. "He doesn't mind." Mr. Culpepper was stooping over the pale hellebore blooms. "By the light of Una's lamp, does Master Middenboro need my poor services then?" "Save him no," said Puck, "he is but a horse next door to an ass, as you'll see presently come." Their shadows jumped and slid on the fruit-tree walls. They filed out of the garden by the snoring pig-pound and the crooning hen-house to the shed, where Middenboro, the old lawnmower pony, lives. His friendly eyes showed green in the light as they set their lamps down. PG 255 on the chicken's drinking trough outside, and pushed past to the haymow. Mr. Culpepper stooped at the door. "Mind where you lie," said Dan, "this hay's full of hedge brushings." In," said Puck, "you've lain in fouler places than this, Nick. Let us keep touch with the stars." He kicked open the top of the half-door and pointed to the clear sky. "There be the planets you conjure with. What does your wisdom make of that wandering and variable star behind those apple boughs?" The children smiled. A bicycle that they knew well was being walked down the steep lane, where Mr. Culpepper leaned forward quickly. "That's some countryman's lantern." "Wrong, Nick," said Puck, "'tis a singular bright star in Virgo, declining towards the house of Aquarius, the water-carrier, who hath lately been afflicted by Gemini. Aren't I right, Una?" Mr. Culpepper snorted contemptuously. "No, it's the village nurse going down to the mill about some fresh twins that came there last week." "Nurse," Una called as the light stopped on the flat. "When can I see the Morris twins? And how are they?" "Next Sunday, perhaps." "Doing beautifully," the nurse called back, and with a ping-ping-ping of the bell brushed round the corner. "Her uncle's a veterinary surgeon near Banbury," Una explained, "and if you ring her bell at night, it rings right beside her bed, not downstairs at all. Then she jumps up always, keeps a pair PG 256 of dry boots in the fender, and goes anywhere she's wanted. We help her bicycle through gaps. Sometimes most of her babies do beautifully. She told us so herself." "I doubt not then that she reads in my books," said Mr. Culpepper quietly. "Twins at the mill," he muttered half aloud, and again he saith, "Return, ye children of men." "Are you a doctor or a rector?" Una asked, and Puck with a shout turned head over heels in the hay. But Mr. Culpepper was quite serious. He told them that he was a physician, astrologer, doctor, who knew all about the stars, as well as all about herbs for medicine. He said that the sun, the moon, and 5 planets called Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, Saturn, and Venus governed everybody, and everything in the world. They all lived in house, mapped out some of them against the dark. With a busy forefinger end, they moved from house to house, like pieces at drafts, and they went loving and hating each other all over the skies. If you knew their likes and dislikes, he said, you could make them cure your patient and hurt your enemy, and find out the secret causes of things. He talked of these 5 planets as though they belonged to him, or as though he were playing long games against them. The children burrowed in the hay up to their chins and looked out over the half-door at the solemn star-powdered sky, till they seemed to be falling upside down into it, while Mr. Culpepper talked about trines and oppositions and conjunctions and sympathies and antipathies in a tone that just matched things. PG 257. A rat ran between Middenboro's feet and the old pony stamped. Mid hates rats, said Dan, and passed him over a lock of hay. I wonder why. Divine astrology tells us, said Mr. Culpepper, the horse being a martial beast, that beareth man to battle, belongs naturally to the red planet Mars, the Lord of War. I would show you him, but he's too near his setting. Rats and mice doing their businesses by night come under the dominion of Our Lady, the moon now between Mars and Luna, the one red t'other white, the one hot t'other cold, and so forth stands, as I have told you, a natural antipathy, or as you say hatred, which antipathy their creatures do inherit, whence good people you may both see and hear your cattle stamp in their stalls for the selfsame causes, as decree the passages of the stars across the unalterable face of heaven. Puck lay along chewing a leaf. They felt him shake with laughter, and Mr. Culpepper sat up stiffly. I myself said he have saved men's lives, and not a few neither, by observing at the proper time. There is a time, mark you, for all things under the sun. Be observing, I say, so small a beast as a rat, in conjunction with so great a matter as this dread arch above us. He swept his hand across the sky. Yet there are those, he went on sourly, who have years without knowledge. Right, said Puck, no fool like an old fool. Mr. Culpepper wrapped his cloak round him, pg 258, and sat still, while the children stared at the great bear on the hilltop. Give him time, Puck whispered behind his hand. He turns like a timber-tugall of a piece. Ahem, Mr. Culpepper said suddenly, I'll prove it to you. When I was physician to Say's horse, and fought the Kinga, rather the man Charles Stuart in Oxfordshire, I had my learning at Cambridge. The plague was very hot all around us. I saw it at close hands. He who says I am ignorant of the plague, for example, is altogether beside the bridge. We grant it, said Puck solemnly, but why talk of the plague this rare night? To prove my argument, this Oxfordshire plague, good people being generated among rivers and ditches, was of a warish watery nature, therefore it was curable by drenching the patient in cold water, and laying him in wet cloths, or at least so I cured some of them. Mark this, it bears on what shall come after. Mark also, Nick, said Puck, that we are not your college of physicians, but only a lad and a lass and a poor lubberkin, therefore be plain, old hyssop on the wall. To be plain and in order with you, I was shot in the chest while gathering of Bethany from a brookside near Thame, and was took by the king's men before their colonel, one Blag or Bragg, whom I warned honestly that I had spent the week past among our plague-stricken. He flung me off into a cowshed much like this here, to die, pg 259, as I supposed, but one of their priests crept in by night, and dressed my wound. He was a Sussex man like myself. Who was that, said Puck suddenly. Zack Toucham. No, Jack Margate, said Mr. Culpepper. Jack Margate of New College, the little merry man that stammered so why a plague was stuttering Jack at Oxford. Then said Puck. He had come out of Sussex, in hope of being made a bishop when the king should have conquered the rebels, as he styled us Parliament men. His college had lent the king some moneys too, which they never got again, no more than simple Jack got his bishopric. When we met, he had had a bitter bellyful of king's promises, and wished to return to his wife and babes. This came about beyond expectation, for so soon as I could stand of my wound, the man Blag made excuse that I had been among the plague, and Jack had been tending me to thrust us both out from their camp. The king had done with Jack now that Jack's college had lent the money, and Blag's physician could not abide me, because I would not sit silent, and see him butcher the sick. He was a college of physicians man, so Blag, I say, thrust us both out with many vile words, for a pair of pestilent prating pragmatical rascals. Ha, called you pragmatical, Nick? Puck started up. High time Oliver came to purge the land. How did you and honest Jack fare next? We were in some sort constrained to each pg 260 others company. I was for going to my house in Spitalfields, he would go to his parish in Sussex, but the plague was broke out, and spreading through Wiltshire, Berkshire and Hampshire, and he was so mad distracted to think that it might even then be among his folks at home that I bore him company. He had comforted me in my distress. I could not have done less, and I remembered that I had a cousin at Great Wigsell near by Jack's parish. Thus we footed it from Oxford cassock and buff coat together, resolute to leave wars on the left side henceforth, and either through our mean appearances, or the plague making men less cruel, we were not hindered. To be sure, they put us in the stocks, one half-day for rogues and vagabonds at a village under St. Leonard's Forest, whereas I have heard nightingales never sing. But the constable very honestly gave me back my astrological almanac, which I carry with me. Mr. Culpepper tapped his thin chest. I dressed a whitlow on his thumb, so we went forward. Not to trouble you with impertinences, we fetched over against Jack Margate's parish, in a storm of rain about the day's end. Here our roads divided, for I would have gone on to my cousin at Great Wigsell, But while Jack was pointing me out his steeple, we saw a man lying drunk as he conceived athwart the road. He said it would be one Hebden, a parishioner, and till then a man of good life, and he accused himself bitterly for an unfaithful shepherd that had left his flock to follow princes. But I saw it was the plague, and not the beginnings of it neither. They had pg 261 set out the plague stone, and the man's head lay on it. What's a plague stone? Dan whispered. When the plague is so hot in a village that the neighbours shut the roads against people, set a hollowed stone pot, or pan where such as would purchase victual from outside may lay money, and the paper of their wants, and depart. Those that would sell come latter, what will a man not do for gain? Snatch the money forth, and leave in exchange such goods as their conscience reckons fair value. I saw a silver groat in the water, and the man's list of what he would buy was rain-pulped in his wet hand. My wife, oh my wife and babes, says Jack of a sudden, and makes uphill with him. A woman peers out from behind a barn, crying out that the village is stricken with the plague, and that for our lives' sake we must avoid it. Sweetheart, says Jack, must I avoid thee? And she leaps at him, and says the babes are safe. She was his wife. When he had thanked God, even to tears, he tells me this was not the welcome he had intended, and presses me to flee the place while I was clean. Nay, the Lord do so to me, and more also if I desert thee now. I said, these affairs are under God's leave in some fashion my strength. Oh, sir, she says, are you a physician? We have none. Then, good people, said I must e'en justify myself to you by my works. pg 262. Look, he stammers. Jack, I took you all this time for a crazy roundhead preacher. He laughs, and she, and then I, all three together in the rain, are overtook by an unreasonable gust or clap of laughter, which none the less eased us. We call it in medicine the hysterical passion. So I went home with em. Why did you not go on to your cousin at Great Wigsell? Nick Puck suggested. Tees barely 7 mile up the road. But the plague was here, Mr. Culpepper answered, and pointed up the hill. What else could I have done? What were the parson's children called? Said Una. Elizabeth, Alison, Stephen, and Charles a babe. I scarce saw them at first, for I separated to live with their father in a cart lodge. The mother we put forced into the house with her babes. She had done enough. And now, good people, give me leave to be particular in this case. The plague was worst on the north side of the street, for lack, as I showed em, of sunshine, which proceeding from the primum mobile or source of life, I speak astrologically, is cleansing and purifying in the highest degree. The plague was hot too by the corn chandlers, where they sell forage to the carters, extreme hot in both mills along the river, and scatteringly in other places, except mark you at the smithy. Mark here, that all forges and smith shops belong to Mars, even as corn and meat, and wine shops acknowledge Venus for their pg 263 mistress. There was no plague in the smithy at Monday's Lane. Monday's Lane, you mean our village? I thought so when you talked about the 2 mills, cried Dan. Where did we put the plague stone? I'd like to have seen it. Then look at it now, said Puck, and pointed to the chickens' drinking trough where they had set their bicycle lamps. It was a rough oblong stone pan, rather like a small kitchen sink, which Phillips, who never wastes anything, had found in a ditch, and had used for his precious hens. That, said Dan and Una, and stared and stared and stared. Mr. Culpepper made impatient noises in his throat, and went on. I am at these pains to be particular, good people, because I would have you follow so far as you may the operations of my mind. That plague which I told you I had handled outside Wallingford in Oxfordshire was of a watery nature, conformable to the brookish riverine country it bred in, and curable, as I have said, by drenching in water. This plague of ours here, for all that it flourished along watercourses, every soul at both mills died of it, could not be so handled. Which brought me to a stand a hum. And your sick people in the meantime? Puck demanded. We persuaded them on the north side of the street to lie out in Hitherham's field, where the plague had taken 1, or at most 2 in a house. Folk would not shift for fear of thieves. In their pg 264 absence, they cast away their lives to die among their goods. Human nature, said Puck. I've seen it time and again. How did your sick do in the fields? They died not near so thick as those that kept within doors, and even then they died more out of distraction and melancholy than plague. But I confess, good people, I could not in any sort master the sickness, or come at a glimmer of its nature or governance. To be brief, I was flat bewildered at the brute malignity of the disease, and sarded what I should have done before, dismissed all conjectures and apprehensions that had grown up within me, chose a good hour by my almanac, clapped my vinegar cloth to my face, and entered some empty houses, resigned to wait upon the stars for guidance. At night were you not horribly frightened? Said Puck. I dared to hope that the God who hath made man so nobly curious to search out his mysteries might not destroy a devout seeker in due time. There is a time, as I have said, for everything under the sun. I spied a whitish rat, very puffed and scabby, which sat beneath the dormer of an attic, through which shined Our Lady the moon. Whilst I looked on him, and Hirsch was moving towards old cold Saturn, her ancient ally. The rat creeped languishingly into her light, and there before my eyes died. Presently his mate or companion came out, laid him down beside there, and in like fashion died. 2 Lateran PG 265 hour or less to midnight. A third rat did e'en the same, always choosing the moonlight to die, and this threw me into an amaze, since as we know the moonlight is favourable, not hurtful to the creatures of the moon, and Saturn, being friends with her, as you would say, was hourly strengthening her evil influence. Yet these 3 rats had been stricken dead in very moonlight. I leaned out of the window to see which of heaven's host might be on our side, and there beheld I good trusty Mars, very red and heated, bustling about his setting. I straddled the roof to see better. Jack Margate came up street, going to comfort our sick in Hitherams field. A tile slipped under my foot. Says he heavily enough, "Watchman, what of the night?" "Heart up, Jack," says Roman 1, "methinks there's one fighting for us, that like a fool I've forgot. All this summer my meaning was naturally the planet Mars." "Pray to him, then," says he. "I forgot him too this summer." He meant God, whom he always bitterly accused himself of having forgotten up in Oxfordshire among the king's men. I called down that he had made amends enough for his sin by his work among the sick, but he said he would not believe so, till the plague was lifted from him. He was at his strength's end more from melancholy than any just cause. I have seen this before among priests and over-cheerful men. I drenched him then and there with a half-cup of waters PG 266, which I do not say cure the plague, but are excellent against heaviness of the spirits. "What were they?" said Dan. "White brandy, rectified camphor, cardamoms, ginger, 2 sorts of pepper and aniseed." Hugh said, "Puck waters you call M." Jack coughed on it valiantly and went downhill with me. I was for the lower mill in the valley to note the aspect of the heavens. My mind had already shadowed forth the reason if not the remedy for our troubles, but I would not impart it to the vulgar, till I was satisfied that practice may be perfect, judgment ought to be sound, and to make judgment sound is required an exquisite knowledge. I left Jack and his lantern among the sick in Hitherams field. He still maintained the prayers of the so-called church, which were rightly forbidden by Cromwell. "You should have told your cousin at Wigsell," said Puck, "and Jack would have been fined for it, and you'd have had half the money. How did you come so to fail in your duty, Nick?" Mr. Culpepper laughed his only laugh that evening, and the children jumped at the loud neigh of it. "We were not fearful of men's judgment in those days," he answered. "Now mark me closely, good people, for what follows will be to you, though not to me, remarkable. When I reached the empty mill, old Saturn, low down in the house of the fishes, threatened the sun's rising place. Our Lady the moon was moving towards the help of him. Understand, I speak astrologically PG 267. I looked abroad upon the high heavens, and I prayed the Maker of M for guidance. Now Mars sparklingly withdrew himself below the sky on the instant of his departure, which I noted a bright star or vapour leaped forth above his head, as though he had heaved up his sword, and broke all about in fire. The cocks crowed midnight through the valley, and I sat me down by the mill-wheel chewing spearmint, though that's a herb of Venus, and calling myself all the asses' heads in the world. 'Twas plain enough now." "What was plain?" said Una. "The true cause and cure of the plague. Mars, good fellow, had fought for us to the uttermost faint, though he had been in the heavens, and this had made me overlook him in my computations. He more than any of the other planets had kept the heavens, which is to say, had been visible some part of each night well-nigh throughout the year. Therefore, his fierce and cleansing influence, warring against the moon, had stretched out to kill those 3 rats under my nose, and under the nose of their natural mistress, the moon. I had known Mars lean half across heaven to deal Our Lady the moon some shrewd blow from under his shield, but I had never before seen his strength displayed so effectual." "I don't understand a bit. Do you mean Mars killed the rats because he hated the moon?" said Una. "That is as plain as the pikestaff with which Blagge's men pushed me forth," Mr. Culpepper answered. "Ill prove it. Why had the plague PG 268 not broken out at the blacksmith's shop in Monday's Lane? Because, as I've shown you, forges and smithies belong naturally to Mars, and for his honour's sake Mars 'ud keep 'em clean from the creatures of the moon. But was it like, think you, that he'd come down and rat-catch in general for lazy ungrateful mankind that were working a willing horse to death? So then you can see that the meaning of the blazing star above him when he set was simply this: destroy and burn the creatures of the moon, for they are at the root of your trouble, and thus having shown you a taste of my power good people ado. Did Mars really say all that Una whispered? Yes, and twice so much as that to anyone who had ears to hear briefly. He enlightened me that the plague was spread by the creatures of the moon Our Lady of Ill Aspect, was the offender my own poor wits showed me, that I Nick Culpepper had the people in my charge God's good providence aiding me, and no time to lose neither. I posted up the hill, and broke into Hitherram's field amongst all at prayers. Eureka good people I cried, and cast down a dead millrat, which id found here's your true enemy revealed at last by the stars. Nay, but I am praying, says Jack, his face was as white as washed silver. There's a time for everything under the sun, says Roman 1, if you would stay the plague take, and kill your rats PG 269. Oh mad stark mad, says he, and wrings his hands. A fellow lay in the ditch beside him who bellows that he'd as soon die mad hunting rats as be preached to death on a cold fallow. They laughed round him at this. But Jack Marget falls on his knees, and very presumptuously petitions that he may be appointed to die to save the rest of his people. This was enough to thrust them back into their melancholy. You are an unfaithful shepherd, Jack, I says, take a bat which we call a stick in Sussex, and kill a rat if you die before sunrise, 'twill save your people. I take a bat, and kill a rat, he says 10 times over like a child, which moved to ungovernable motions of that hysterical passion before mentioned, so that they laughed all, and at least warmed their chill bloods at that very hour rown o'clock, or a little after when. The fires of life burn lowest truly. There is a time for everything, and the physician must work with itahema miss his cure to be brief with. You I persuaded sick, or sound to have at the whole generation of rats throughout the village. And there's a reason for all things too, though the wise physician need not blab all imprimis or firstly, the mere sport of it, which lasted 10 days drew most markedly out of their melancholy id defy sorrowful job himself to lament or scratch, while he's routing rats from a rick secundo or secondly, the vehement act and operation of this chase or war opened their skins, PG 270, to generous transpiration more, vulgarly sweated handsomely. And this further drew off their black beleth mother of sickness thirdly. When we came to burn the bodies of the rats, I sprinkled sulphur on the faggots, whereby the onlookers were as handsomely suffumigated. This I could not have compassed, if I had made it a mere physician's business. They'd have thought it some conjuration, yet more we cleansed, limed, and burned out 100 foul poke-holes, sinks, sloughs, and corners of unvisited filth, in and about the houses in the village, and by good fortune mark here, that Mars was in opposition to Venus burned the cornchandler's shop to the ground. Mars loves not Venus. Will Noakes the saddler dropped his lantern on a truss of straw, while he was wrath-hunting there. Had ye given Will any of that gentle cordial of yours, Nick, by any chance, said Puck. A glass or 2 glasses, not more, but as I would say in fine, when we had killed the rats, I took ash, slag, and charcoal from the smithy, and burnt earth from the brickyard. I reason that a brickyard belongs to Mars, and rammed it with iron crowbars into the ratruns and berries. And beneath all the house floors the creatures of the moon hate all that Mars hath used for his own clean ends, for exemplar rats bite not iron. And how did poor stuttering Jack endure it, said Puck. He sweated out his melancholy through his skin, and catched a loose cough which I cured with electuaries according to art. It is noteworthy PG 271, were I speaking among my equals, that the venom of the plague translated or turned itself into, and evaporated or went away, as a very heavy hoarseness and thickness of the head, throat, and chest. Observe from my books which planets govern these portions of man's body, and your darkness, good people, shall be illuminate to him, none the less the plague qua plague ceased, and took off, for we only lost 3 more and 2 of had it already on from the morning of the day that Mars enlightened me by the lower Roman 1099, he coughed almost trumpeted triumphantly. It is proved, he jerked out, I say I have proved my contention, which is that by divine astrology, and humble search into the veritable causes of things at the proper time of the sons of wisdom may combat even the plague. Him Puck replied, for my own part one hold that a simple soul. Mine simple forsooth, said Mr. Culpepper. A very simple soul, a high courage tempered with sound and stubborn conceit, is stronger than all the stars in their courses, so I confess truly that you saved the village, Nick. I stubborn, I stiff-necked, I ascribed all my poor success under God's good providence to divine astrology, not to me the glory you talk, as that dear weeping ass Jack Marget preached, before I went back to my work in Red Lion House, Spitalfields. Oh, stammering Jack preached, did he, they say, he loses his stammer in the pulpit PG 272. And his wits with it, he delivered a most idolatrous discourse. When the plague was stayed, he took for his text the wise man that delivered the city. I could have given him a better, such as there is a time for. But what made you go to church to hear him? Puck interrupted. Whale Atursel was your lawfully appointed preacher, and a dull dog he was. Mr. Culpepper wriggled uneasily. The vulgar, said he, the old crones Anderhem, the children Alison, and the others, they dragged me to the house of Rimmon. By the hand I was in two minds to inform on Jack, for maintaining the mummeries of the falsely called church, which ill proved to you, are founded merely on ancient fables. Stick to your herbs and planets, said Puck, laughing. You should have told the magistrates, Nick, and had Jack fined again. Why did you neglect your plain duty? Because I was kneeling and praying and weeping with the rest of 'em at the altar rails in medicine. This is called the hysterical passion. It may bait, may be. That's as may be, said Puck. They heard him turn the hay. Why, your hay is half hedge-brushings. He said you don't expect a horse to thrive on oak and ash and thorn leaves, do you? Ping, ping, ping went the bicycle bell round. The corner nurse was coming back from the Roman 1099, pg 273. Is it all right, Una called. All quite right, nurse called back. They're to be christened next Sunday. What they both leaned forward across the half-door. It could not have been properly fastened, for it opened, and tilted them out with hay and leaves sticking all over them. Come on, we must get those two twins' names, said Una, and they charged uphill shouting over the hedge, till nurse slowed up and told them. When they returned, old Middenborough had got out of his stall, and they spent a lively 10 minutes chasing him in again by starlight. pg 274, pg 275.